Zuko formed a death pact with Aang, Aang severed his connection with Avatar Roku, and we find out what happened to everyone's favorite character, the Cabbage Merchant? Avatar The Last Airbender and its sequel, The Legend of Korra, are true standouts on the Nickelodeon lineup. They explore all sorts of subjects that both a young and mature audience can appreciate. With all that being said, with the transition from Aang to Korra, there was a lot of time between those two series. It makes you wonder, what happened to everybody? A lot of our favorite characters aren't around anymore for us to enjoy. What happened to Sokka, damn it? Well, thanks to various convention panels, comic books, and novels, we now know. Let's dive into some crazy things that happened between The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. Aang and Zuko's rivalry turned friendship was one of the high points of the series. Both characters dealt with their doubts and fears towards responsibility and where they would fit in the world. When they made amends and joined forces, you would have thought that they would have just become friends and stayed that way. I mean, this is Zuko we're talking about, and he does have a flair for the melodramatic. Thanks to the Dark Horse comics, we get to see what happened after the end of Avatar The Last Airbender. Zuko becomes the Fire Lord, ruling the Fire Nation while working with the rest of Team Avatar to try and heal the world from the damage of the 100-Year War with what they call the Harmonic Restoration Movement. After the announcement of the movement, Team Avatar make their way to Ba Sing Se to celebrate the end of the war. It's at this moment that Zuko makes a grave request. Zuko loses sleep over the idea that because he is now the Fire Lord, he will slowly become like his father, Fire Lord Ozai. Because of this, he asks that if he were to start to resemble his father in his actions, that Aang takes his life without hesitation. Aang reluctantly accepts. During a battle between the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom over sovereignty of the wartime colonies, Zuko and Aang almost come head-to-head, where Zuko accepts his fate. But after Aang saves Zuko from a collapsing chasm, the two agree to eliminate the pact, as it's too much for the Avatar to handle on top of everything else. The Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom are arguably the most bull-headed of the four nations, aren't they? You'd think that after a 100-year war, the two nations would have some time to cool off, but nope. Less than a year after the end of the genocidal war, the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation came to head once again over the sovereignty of the Fire Nation colonies. Over the 100-year war, the Fire Nation spread out colonies across many lands, including over the continent where the Earth Kingdom rules. When Team Avatar announces the Harmonic Restoration Movement, the initial plan is for the colonies to reunite with the land's original owners. However, that turns out to be more complicated than you would think. Because Fire Nation colonies have been founded for so long, there was enough time for cross-nation families to form. Because of this, some colonies resisted being absorbed back into other kingdoms, especially the city of Udao. After an investigation into how the locals felt regarding the change, Zuko withdrew his support for the movement, which caused Earth King Kue to respond aggressively, believing that the Fire Nation was once again trying to force their will upon other nations. This resulted in a fierce battle, which ended when Aang stepped in to separate the two sides. Upon negotiation, Aang and the rest of Team Avatar agreed that a new nation should be born. If you've watched The Legend of Korra, you would know about the Republic City and the United Republic of Nations. It's the center where a lot of the story happens, but you may not know how it was founded and why it was so different from the rest of the nations. You see, the Fire Nation colonies founded during the 100-Year War elected to be not handed back to the Earth Kingdom because cross-nation family roots had already been set. Because of this, democratic elections formed a new government for these colonies, which resulted in the founding of Republic City and the United Republic of Nations. The real difference between this nation and others was its heavy focus on democracy. The Fire Nation, the Earth Kingdom, and the Water Tribes are all primarily ruled by a monarchical government. The ruler or head of each nation was usually of royal blood. Ozai being a descendant of Fire Lord Sozin, King Kue is the father of future Earth Queen Ho Ting, and the chief of the Northern Water Tribe, Arnook, took the position after his father died, who then had a daughter, Princess Yue, who was supposed to marry to continue the bloodline. Because of this different hierarchical structure, the city saw its fair share of pros and cons, as does every society. But if it wasn't for Team Avatar, it wouldn't have happened at all. One of the burning questions from the last Avatar was, where is Zuko's mother? During The Last Airbender, as punishment for Ozai's sociopathic attempt to usurp his brother Iroh as first in line for the throne, his father, Fire Lord Azula, ordered him to kill Zuko. Zuko's mother Ursa stopped him, but we never found out how and what happened to her after she disappeared. Well, thanks to the Dark Horse comics, we now know. Once the 100-Year War was over, Zuko interrogated Ozai and even let Azula free to try and find some clue as to what happened to Ursa. Azula revealed a letter from Ursa to an old boyfriend called Ikem, revealing that Zuko may have been his son rather than that of Ozai. Because of this, questions were raised about his lineage and his right to the throne, much to Azula's delight. They did find Zuko's mother, but not as they expected. As it turned out, the letter was found to be a lie. You see, Ursa was sure her letters were being intercepted, and so wrote this one about Zuko being Ikem's son to goad Ozai into reacting to prove it. Once she had learned that Ozai was intent on killing Zuko, she made a deal with him. She would kill his father and ensure he inherited the throne so he would spare Zuko's life. Ozai accepted and then secretly banished her. Ursa returns to her old hometown where she met Norin, who turned out to be her old boyfriend Ikem, who was granted a new face by a spirit called the Mother of Faces so he could begin again after Ursa left. Ursa then asked the Mother of Faces the same request, married Norin, took the name Noriko, had a child, and wiped her memory of her previous life. Upon Zuko and Team Avatar finding Ursa in her new form of Noriko, she remembered her past life. Disappointed that she just left her children behind, she chose to regain her past appearance and memories and join Zuko in the Fire Nation capital alongside her new family. Avatar Roku was a major source of wisdom throughout The Last Airbender, but this wisdom would not always be so relevant. Towards the end of The Last Airbender, Aang began questioning the wisdom of his past selves when everyone he contacted assured him the best action was to murder Fire Lord Ozai for the safety of the world. After the end of the 100-Year War, Aang once again communicated with Roku regarding the Fire Nation colonies, but Roku's answer was, again, not what Aang was looking for. He advocated repeatedly that Aang kill Zuko over what appeared to be dictator-like actions. Once Aang had spared Zuko's life, Roku berated him for his actions regarding the Four Nations, but Aang refused, saying that his advice was no longer relevant in a post-war era. As a result, Aang severed his connection with his past selves to form his path. He did eventually reconnect with Roku in past avatars, where they reconciled. When Zuko took the throne as Fire Lord, not everyone was so pleased with the Fire Nation's step in a more peaceful direction. Yukano, an Ozai loyalist and Mai's father, took Zuko's rise to the throne as an insubordinate usurper who didn't have the Fire Nation's best interests at heart. As a result, he forms the new Ozai Society, a rebellious group of Ozai loyalists that were intent on restoring Fire Lord Ozai to the throne. They attacked Zuko and his new family, threatening him so he would step down, but thanks to the efforts of a deserter among the society's ranks, Zuko and his family survived. This, however, didn't stop the rebellion. Once Zuko returned home, he faced the new threats of the Kemari Kage, a group of dangerous spirits who were kidnapping children in the night. Yukano, influenced by Azula, used this opportunity to spark insurrection in the Fire Nation capital under the guise of the Safe Nation Society, a group intent on protecting citizens in a way Zuko was supposedly incapable of doing. Violence and riots followed, which resulted in Yukano being arrested, but not without casting serious doubt on Zuko's position as leader. Zuko's rise to power was not without its drawbacks and resistance. Not only was there an active rebellion against him, but he was also victim to 6 assassination attempts within less than a year. One of the most notable was from Fire Nation colony resident Cory. Cory proved to be too much for the Fire Nation guards, but was repelled by Zuko and forced to reveal her reason behind the attack. This would lead him to visiting her home colony of Udao, where insurrection was brewing over his attempt to return the colony to the Earth Kingdom. The citizens felt betrayed by Zuko, thinking that he was abandoning them. This resulted in Zuko withdrawing his support from the Harmonic Restoration movement and resulted in the founding of the United Republic of Nations. One of the best comic relief characters in all of The Last Airbender was the Cabbage Merchant. Showing up in the most unexpected of places, his bad luck became a running joke that every Avatar fan recalls fondly. But one thing you may be happy to find out is that his misfortune didn't last forever. During the Dark Horse comic run The Rift, the Cabbage Merchant is among the citizens who are forced to evacuate Cranefish Town as a vengeful spirit was set to attack a metal refinery nearby. The Cabbage Merchant then saw the character Satoru's forklift invention. Upon seeing this inspirational machinery, he supposedly invested heavily in the creation of affordable transportation, creating Cabbage Corp. Throughout the Legend of Korra, Cabbage Corp and its Cabbage Car are known as the cheaper alternative to its rival, the Satomobile from Future Industries. Despite his son being framed for supplying terrorist weaponry, upon his name being cleared, the company remained in business till the end of the Legend of Korra. The skill of bending liquid inside the body of a living being was perhaps one of the most terrifying abilities showcased in the world of Avatar. When we see it in The Last Airbender, it seems that the skill was only learned and developed by ex-Fire Nation prisoner Hama, who then passed the skill to Katara. However, as it turns out, you just have to be curious and determined enough to discover bloodbending. During The Legend of Korra, we learn that in between the two series, bloodbending resurfaced. The powerful bloodbender Yakone stood trial, where upon his escape attempt, Aang removed his bending. This, however, didn't mean that the skill was lost, as he still retained the knowledge of how to perform the skill. He taught his sons Noatak and Tarlok the skill, which then resurfaced during the Equalist Revolution in The Legend of Korra. But one thing to note is that the United Republic of Nations had outlawed the practice, which may infer that there are more bloodbenders out there, but just haven't been found yet. Azula was an incredibly interesting character. Her descent into madness was perhaps one of the most disturbing things in the show that you just couldn't take your eyes away from. After Zuko and Katara had defeated Azula at the end of the series, Zuko imprisoned her. But after learning that she had information as to the whereabouts of their mother, Zuko set her free. Azula had hopes that a letter they had found hinting at Zuko not being of royal blood meant that she could be Fire Lord instead. Once she learned that her mother had a new family and that Zuko was of the royal bloodline, she completely lost it and disappeared. It was only once Zuko returned to the Fire Nation capital that he learned Azula had formed a group called the Fire Warriors. Disguised as ancient spirits, the Kemari Kage, she kidnapped children and sparked insurrection in an attempt to make Zuko a more ruthless leader, just like their father. Once Zuko had saved the children and stopped her plot, she simply watched on as Zuko continued to rule. But we never saw her again. Because she isn't mentioned in The Legend of Korra or any future related releases, we still don't know what happened to her. I think Sokka doesn't get the praise he deserves. He's one of the most competent characters despite having no bending, and adds some much needed levity to a show that can get quite dark at times. So what happened to our favorite boomerang swinging warrior? Well, we can at least make a few assumptions from what little material there is. Sokka accompanied Team Avatar on many adventures after the 100-Year War, providing his razor-sharp wit and quick smarts to the various dangers they faced throughout the comics. We do learn in adulthood he became the chairman of the United Republic's Council. He was involved with his nieces and nephews, even writing a letter to Tenzin to not solely rely on bending and to develop other skills as well. Sokka became the chieftain of the Southern Water Tribe and also assisted in thwarting the attempts by the Red Lotus to kidnap a young Korra. However, it appears that he died having no children, despite being the obvious ladies' man of Team Avatar. The Kyoshi Warriors were a badass group of women that kicked ass and took names. Given that Kyoshi Island was created by Avatar Kyoshi to keep it safe from foreign powers, it never really followed Earth Kingdom allegiance. That, and given Suki's relations with Team Avatar, it's no surprise that after the 100-Year War, the Kyoshi Warriors mostly assisted Zuko by being his elite bodyguards and by assisting Team Avatar in the development of certain regions. As Suki and members of Team Avatar attempted to quell a Bender supremacist uprising, Suki proceeded to transfer the skills she had learned from both the Kyoshi Warriors and Ty Lee to better prepare the non-Bender police for future battles. In The Legend of Korra, the Kyoshi Warriors were never mentioned. One of the best characters in all of Avatar is by far Iroh. Leaves from the Vine still brings a tear to my eye. He was always a very spiritual character, being able to see spirits in the physical plane when others could not, and even being rumored to have traveled to the spirit world at one point. So if anyone was able to transcend permanently to the spirit world, it would have been him. Iroh did many things after the 100-Year War. He continued to run the Jasmine Dragon in Ba Sing Se, served as interim Fire Lord while Zuko was out finding his mother, and even introduced a National Tea Appreciation Day. But when he felt that he had done all he could in the physical plane, he chose to pass on. In doing so, Iroh was able to make a new home in the spirit world, forming his own tea shop and providing guidance to lost souls, including Korra. Spirits in the spirit world play a huge part in the Avatar world. But did you know that Aang saved the world from a vengeful spirit before the Spirit Gates became a thing in the sequel? During the Dark Horse comics, Aang and Team Avatar visit a town called Cranefish. It's here where Aang looks to hold the Yang Chen Festival, a festival that was part of airbending culture. But upon arriving in the town, he learns that local illegal mining has disturbed sacred ground and is polluting the local area. As a result, a powerful spirit called General Old Iron revives from slumber and attempts to exact revenge on humanity. We learn that a previous Avatar, Yang Chen, struck a deal with the spirit to stop its endless rampage as long as the Yang Chen festival was celebrated, but it was lost due to the 100-Year War. After a great battle between Old Iron and Team Avatar, Old Iron relents and leaves the physical world, believing that spirits no longer have a place in this world. Aang contacts Old Iron's friend Lady Tien Hai and creates the Spirit Friendship Festival to show spirits still have a place in this world. Avatar covers a lot of subjects, but a war over oil isn't something most of us expected. During the Dark Horse comics North and South, Sokka and Katara return to the Southern Water Tribe to find their father Hakoda is aiding with the restoration of the Southern Water Tribe. However, once it's found out that below the Southern Water Tribe lies a huge oil reserve, tensions brew as rebel Southerner Galak reveals documents confirming that the restoration of the South by the Northern tribes was just an attempt to take control of their oil reserves for themselves. As a result, Galak and his rebel group attacked and repelled the Northern Water Tribe, and a small civil war brewed. Galak eventually died after Team Avatar foiled his plans, but his legacy left lasting resentment between the tribes that is still evident in the Legend of Korra. And there you have it. There's still so much to tell from the Avatar world. I'm in some desperate need for another animated series. What do you guys think? Are there any points that we missed? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.